For thousands of years, humanity was the biggest joke in the galaxy. Whenever the leaders of powerful alien civilizations gathered inside the Galactic Council, someone would eventually make a joke about humans. Some laughed at Earth's small territory. Others laughed at humanity's old technology. Many believed humans were too emotional, too divided, and too weak to become an important species to most of the galaxy. Earth was simply a small blue world trying to survive among giants. The humans knew what others thought about them, but they rarely argued. Instead, they continued building their cities, improving their technology, and exploring space one step at a time. The galaxy saw this as proof of human weakness. They believed humanity lacked ambition. They were wrong. Far above the capital world of the Galactic Council, hundreds of massive starships floated in orbit. The station itself was larger than some moons. It was here that the most powerful beings in the galaxy met to discuss important matters. On this particular day, the council chamber was crowded. Representatives from dozens of species sat in their assigned places. A discussion about border security had just ended. As usual, the conversation slowly drifted toward humans. The humans still use outdated warp systems, one alien leader said. Several council members laughed. They spend more time arguing with each other than expanding their territory, another added. More laughter followed. A third representative shook his head. I still don't understand why they were ever given council observer status. The room filled with amused voices. For many species, mocking humanity had become a tradition. Then something unexpected happened. A young communications officer suddenly rushed into the chamber. His face looked pale. His breathing was heavy. The room quickly became silent. Interrupting a council meeting was almost unheard of. The officer hurried toward the center platform. Council members, he said nervously. We have received an emergency transmission from the outer colonies, immediately. The atmosphere changed. Emergency transmissions were never good news. The council leader stood from his seat. What kind of emergency? He asked. The officer swallowed hard. The colony on Sector 9 has gone dark. Murmurs spread across the room. Sector 9 was an important region near the edge of explored space. Several mining worlds operated there. Losing contact with one colony was unusual. Losing contact with all of them was terrifying. Pirates? Someone suggested. The officer shook his head. No signs of pirate activity. A natural disaster? Again, he shook his head. No evidence of that either. The council members exchanged worried looks. Then the officer activated a holographic display. A damaged recording appeared above the chamber floor. Static filled the image. The video showed a military officer standing inside a command center. Warning lights flashed behind him. People were running through the background. The officer looked exhausted and frightened. His voice crackled through the speakers. This is Governor Tolik of Sector 9, he said. If anyone receives this message, you must warn the council immediately. The room became completely silent. The governor continued. They have returned. Several council members frowned. Nobody understood what he meant. The recording shook violently. Somewhere in the distance, explosions could be heard. The governor glanced over his shoulder before speaking again. We thought they were gone forever. His hands trembled. We were wrong. Static briefly covered the screen. Then the governor leaned closer to the camera when he spoke his next words. Fear filled every corner of the council chamber. The humans are coming back. The transmission ended. Silence followed. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. For several seconds, the giant chamber felt frozen. Then confusion erupted. What does that mean? Humans? Impossible. They barely control their own systems. Voices filled the room. Many refused to believe the message. Others suddenly looked nervous. Not everyone inside the council remembered humanity's history the same way. Most younger species only knew the jokes, but some of the older members remembered something different. They remembered the day humans disappeared. Nearly 500 years earlier, humanity had suddenly left known space. Without warning, their colonies vanished. Their fleets disappeared, their signals went silent. Many believed humanity had simply collapsed. Others believed they had destroyed themselves through war. No one ever found proof. Eventually, the galaxy stopped searching. Humanity became little more than an old story, a forgotten chapter of history, until now. The council leader slowly turned toward the communications officer. "Is there anything else?" he asked. The officer hesitated, his hands shook slightly. Yes, the room became quiet once more. "We received one final scanner report before Sector 9 went silent." The officer touched the controls. A new hologram appeared above the chamber. At first, it looked like an ordinary fleet formation. Then the image zoomed out. Gasps spread across the room. The fleet was enormous. Thousands of ships filled the darkness of space. Warships, carriers, battlecruisers. Vessels larger than anything currently operated by the Galactic Council. And at the center of the formation was a symbol. A symbol many believed they would never see again. Several elderly council members immediately recognized it. Fear appeared on their faces because the symbol belonged to only one civilization. Humanity. The image continued zooming outward, revealing more ships and more and more, until nobody could count them anymore. Then a single line of text appeared beneath the fleet. A message sent across the stars. A message directed toward the entire galaxy. Humanity has returned, and for the first time in centuries, the species everyone mocked became the species everyone feared. The words "humanity has returned" spread across the galaxy faster than any ship could travel. News networks interrupted their normal broadcasts. Military commanders called emergency meetings. Government leaders demanded answers. For centuries, humans had been nothing more than a forgotten story. Now they were suddenly the biggest topic in the galaxy. Nobody understood how it had happened. Nobody knew where they had been. And nobody knew why they had returned. Inside the Galactic Council, fear continued to grow. The giant chamber that once echoed with laughter now felt cold and tense. The council members stared at the image of the massive human fleet. Thousands of ships remained visible on the holographic display. The fleet was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Its design was strange, its size was terrifying, and its technology appeared far beyond modern standards. The council leader finally broke the silence. "Someone explain this," he said. An elderly representative slowly stood from his seat. His name was Varric. He was one of the few council members old enough to remember the truth. For years he had remained silent, but now silence was no longer an option. "The galaxy has been told many lies about humanity," he said. The room became quiet. Every eye turned toward him. "What do you mean?" asked another council member. Varric looked around the chamber. His expression was serious. "Humans did not disappear because they were weak," he said. "They disappeared because we forced them to leave." The room erupted with shocked voices. Many younger representatives could not believe what they were hearing. The official history record said humans had simply vanished. No mention of exile existed anywhere. The council leader narrowed his eyes. "Explain everything," he ordered. Varric nodded slowly. 500 years earlier, humanity had been very different. They were not the strongest species, they were not the richest, and they certainly did not have the largest territory. But they possessed something unusual, something that frightened many powerful civilizations. Humans adapted faster than anyone else. Every challenge made them stronger. Every failure taught them something new. Whenever another species developed a new technology, humans quickly learned how it worked. Then they improved it. Whenever they lost a battle, they studied their mistakes, then returned stronger. The major powers of the galaxy began to notice, and they became worried at first. They laughed at humanity, but behind closed doors, many leaders feared what humans could become. Their population grew rapidly, their industries expanded. Their scientists made discoveries at an incredible pace. Humanity was advancing too quickly. Then came the event that changed everything. A powerful alien empire demanded control over a small human colony. The empire believed humans would surrender immediately. Instead, humanity refused. The conflict lasted only a few weeks. But the result shocked the galaxy. Humans defeated a military force that was considered unbeatable. The victory was not achieved through superior weapons. It was achieved through creativity. Human commanders used strategies nobody expected, for the first time. Many species realized humans were far more dangerous than they appeared. Fear spread among the major powers. Eventually, secret meetings began. Several powerful civilizations came together. Officially, they claimed they wanted peace. In reality, they wanted to stop humanity's rise. The Council created a plan. Humanity would be pushed toward the far edge of explored space. Their expansion routes would be blocked. Their trade agreements would be restricted, and their influence would be reduced. The operation was presented as a diplomatic agreement. But it was really an exile. The humans understood exactly what was happening. They knew the galaxy wanted them gone. Many expected humanity to start a war, but something The message echoed across the galaxy. The exile is over. We are home. No threats. No demands, no declaration of war. Just 6 simple words. Yet those words created more fear than an entire fleet of warships. Across hundreds of star systems, governments entered emergency mode. Military fleets were recalled. Planetary defenses were activated. Citizens watched the news with growing anxiety. Nobody knew what humanity wanted. And that uncertainty was terrifying. Inside the Galactic Council, every screen displayed the same image: human fleets emerging from deep space. Sector after sector lit up with new contact reports. The numbers kept increasing. No one could understand how humans had built such a massive force in secret. For 500 years they had been completely hidden. Now they were appearing everywhere at once. The council leader stood silently, his eyes fixed on the giant star map. Finally, he spoke. Track their movements. Within seconds, military analysts began studying the data. Minutes passed. Then one officer suddenly frowned. That's strange. The council leader looked at him. What is it? The officer enlarged several flight paths. The room watched carefully. At first, the routes seemed random. But as more information appeared, a surprising pattern emerged. The human fleets were not moving toward major population centers. They were not heading toward military headquarters. They were not preparing to invade important worlds. Instead, they were all traveling toward one location, a distant region near the outer edge of the galaxy. Confusion spread throughout the chamber. Why would they go there? One representative asked. There is nothing important in that region. Another officer shook his head. Not anymore. The room turned toward him. The officer opened an old archive file. A forgotten star system appeared on the screen. Its name was almost unknown to modern civilization. Most people had never heard of it. The system had been abandoned centuries ago. Official records described it as useless, uninhabitable, worthless. Yet every human fleet was heading directly toward it. The council leader narrowed his eyes. Find out why. Far away, deep within the abandoned system, something enormous floated in darkness. The object was ancient, older than any civilization currently living in the galaxy. Its surface stretched across hundreds of kilometers. Massive structures covered its exterior. Most of it remained hidden beneath layers of black metal. For thousands of years, it had drifted silently through space, forgotten by history, unknown to nearly everyone. But not unknown to humanity 500 years earlier. During the early years of exile, human explorers had discovered it. At first, they believed it was a dead space station. They were wrong. The structure was something far more important, something impossible. It was a gateway. A gateway built by a civilization so ancient that even its name had been lost. Human scientists spent centuries studying the artifact, slowly unlocking its secrets, slowly learning why it had been hidden, and eventually discovering something that changed everything. The gateway did not lead to another star system. It led beyond the galaxy itself, back in the present. A human command ship floated near the edge of the abandoned system. Inside the bridge, hundreds of officers worked quietly. Unlike the panic spreading through alien space, the humans remained calm, focused, disciplined. At the center of the bridge stood Grand Admiral Marcus Kane, one of the most respected leaders in human history. His hair had turned gray long ago, but his eyes remained sharp. A young officer approached him. "Admiral, all fleets are arriving on schedule." Kane nodded. "Status of the gateway?" "The final activation sequence is ready." The bridge became silent. Everyone understood the importance of those words. For 5 centuries, humanity had prepared for this moment. Now it was finally here. The officer hesitated before speaking again. "There is another issue." Kane turned toward him. "What is it?" "The Galactic Council is demanding an explanation." Several officers exchanged amused looks. The Council wanted answers, unfortunately for them. The truth was difficult to explain. Kane stared at the stars for several seconds. Then he spoke quietly. "They will know soon enough, meanwhile." Inside the Galactic Council, panic continued growing. New reports arrived every minute. Human fleets now surrounded the abandoned system. The number of ships was beyond calculation. Then suddenly, every sensor station in the region detected an enormous energy surge. Alarms sounded everywhere. Scientists rushed to their consoles. Military officers shouted orders. Nobody understood what was happening. The energy readings continued climbing higher and higher and higher, until they exceeded anything ever recorded. Then the impossible happened. The ancient structure inside the abandoned system began to move. For thousands of years, it had remained dormant. Now giant sections of its surface slowly opened. Massive rings rotated around its center. Brilliant blue light flooded the darkness. Entire stars seemed dim compared to its brightness. Across the galaxy, billions of people watched the live broadcast. Nobody spoke. Nobody looked away. The gateway was awakening after centuries of silence. It was finally active inside the human flagship. Warning lights flashed across every screen. The activation had begun. There was no turning back now. The ancient doorway slowly expanded. A glowing passage appeared in its center. But what emerged on the scanners next caused even human officers to freeze. The readings were impossible. A young technician stared at his display in disbelief. "Admiral." Kane immediately noticed the fear in his voice. "What did you find?" The technician looked up slowly, his face pale, his hands trembling. Then he spoke the words nobody expected to hear. "Something is already coming through from the other side." The bridge fell silent. And for the first time in many years, Grand Admiral Marcus Kane felt a chill run down his spine. For a moment, nobody on the human flagship moved. The young technician's words hung in the air like a warning. "Something is already coming through from the other side." Grand Admiral Marcus Kane stepped toward the main display. Every officer on the bridge stared at the glowing gateway. The giant structure continued to rotate. Blue energy surged across its surface. The passage at its center grew brighter every second. Whatever was approaching was moving fast, very fast. "Can we identify it?" Kane asked. The sensor teams worked frantically. Streams of data flooded their screens. But the results made no sense. One officer shook her head. No known energy signature. Another looked equally confused. No life signs. A third officer swallowed nervously. And no engine emissions. The bridge became silent again. Every spacecraft ever built left some kind of trace. This object left almost none. It was as if the laws of physics barely applied to it. Then the first image appeared. The object emerged slowly from the glowing passage. At first, it looked like a shadow. A giant black shape against the blue light. As more of it became visible, the bridge crew stared in disbelief. It was enormous. Far larger than any ship humanity had ever built. Its surface looked damaged and ancient. Parts of it appeared broken. Other sections seemed completely dead. Yet it was still moving, still functioning. Still crossing through the gateway, deep inside the Galactic Council chamber. Alien leaders watched the same broadcast. Fear spread through the room. The object was unlike anything in their records. Nobody knew what they were looking at. One scientist finally spoke. "That cannot be a ship," another nodded. "It is too large," but the readings said otherwise. It was a vessel larger than entire cities. As the ancient craft fully entered the galaxy, something unexpected happened. It stopped. The massive object remained motionless near the gateway. No weapons activated. No signals were transmitted. Nothing happened. Minutes passed. Then suddenly every communication system in the region came alive. A signal burst from the ancient vessel. The transmission spread across hundreds of systems at once. Human ships received it. Alien fleets received it. Even civilian stations received it. The message contained only a single sentence. "Warning. The hunters have located this galaxy." The signal ended immediately. Confusion erupted everywhere. Who were the hunters? What galaxy? What warning? Millions of questions appeared, but there were no answers, only silence. Back on the human flagship, Kane's expression darkened. He had hoped the warning would never come. For centuries, humanity had feared this possibility. Now their worst nightmare was becoming reality. One of his officers looked toward him. "You know what that means, don't you?" Kane nodded slowly. "Yes." The officer's face turned pale. "Then tell us." The admiral stared at the stars beyond the bridge windows. Before humanity's exile, nobody knew what existed beyond the edge of the galaxy. Most civilizations assumed empty space stretched forever. Human explorers discovered something different. Beyond the galaxy existed countless others. Some alive, some dead, and many completely empty. Human exploration fleets had spent centuries studying them. What they found was terrifying. Entire galaxies had been wiped out. Not damaged, not conquered, erased. Stars remained, planets remained. But life was gone. Every civilization, every species, every city simply vanished at first. Humans believed natural disasters were responsible. Then they found evidence, a pattern. Something was hunting intelligent life across the universe. Something ancient, something patient, and something unbelievably powerful. The explorers named them the Hunters. Nobody knew where. The bridge of the human flagship fell silent. The red markers on the star map continued flashing. Thousands of them, scattered around the outer regions of the galaxy. For centuries, humanity had feared this moment. Now it had arrived. The hunters were here. And they were already moving. Grand Admiral Marcus Kane stared at the display. His face remained calm. But everyone on the bridge could feel the tension. One officer broke the silence. "Can we stop them before they reach the inner systems?" Kane looked at the incoming data, then slowly shook his head. No. The answer sent a chill through the room. The hunters were too close, too many. And spreading too quickly. Humanity had prepared for war. But even they had hoped for more time, far away, inside the Galactic Council. Panic was growing. The council members argued loudly. Some demanded immediate evacuation plans. Others wanted every military fleet mobilized. Many still struggled to believe the threat was real. After all, nobody had actually seen a hunter attack. Not yet. Then the first report arrived. A mining colony near the edge of the galaxy suddenly lost contact. The world was called Varnice 12. Home to nearly 3 million citizens, at first. Officials believed it was a communication failure. But minutes later, a patrol fleet entered the system. What they found shocked everyone. The colony was gone, not damaged. Not occupied, gone. The cities had vanished. The orbital stations had vanished. Even the defense platforms had disappeared. It looked as if the entire civilization had simply been erased. The patrol commander immediately sent a distress signal. Before he could finish the report, his fleet disappeared too. The transmission ended in static. Across the galaxy, fear began spreading. Then another colony went silent. And another within hours. Dozens of systems stopped responding. News networks broadcast emergency alerts. Citizens rushed into shelters. Governments declared states of emergency. The galaxy was experiencing something it had not faced in thousands of years. Pure fear, meanwhile. A powerful alien battle fleet was sent to intercept one of the hunter forces. The fleet consisted of over 800 warships. It was considered one of the strongest military groups in known space. Its commander, Admiral Xeron, had never lost a battle. His ships arrived near a remote star system where hunter activity had been detected. The crews prepared for combat, weapons powered up, shields activated. Fighter squadrons launched, everything appeared ready. Then the hunters arrived. At first, only a few dark shapes appeared on sensors. Xeron smiled. The enemy force looked small. Far smaller than expected. Victory seemed certain. Then the dark shapes moved, and suddenly the situation changed. The hunter vessels accelerated faster than any known technology. Within seconds, they crossed impossible distances. The alien fleet opened fire. Thousands of energy beams lit up space. Missiles raced toward their targets. The attack should have destroyed anything in its path. Instead, the hunter ships passed through the barrage untouched, as if they had predicted every shot. As if they had seen the future. Then they attacked. The battle lasted less than 4 minutes when it ended. Admiral Xeron's fleet no longer existed. 800 warships gone, only debris remained. The shocking footage quickly reached the Galactic Council. No one spoke while watching the recording. The defeat was absolute. The hunters had barely slowed down for the first time. Many council members understood the truth. This was not a normal invasion. This was extermination, back on the human flagship. New reports continued arriving. System after system was falling. Entire populations were disappearing. One young officer clenched his fists. "We have to do something," Kane nodded. "We will." The officer looked surprised. "Then why are we waiting?" The admiral activated a larger tactical map. Hundreds of human fleets appeared across the display, each one moving toward a different location. "Because this battle cannot be won with panic," Kane replied. The officer studied the map. Then his eyes widened. Human ships were not retreating. They were positioning themselves, creating defensive lines across the galaxy. For centuries, humanity had studied the hunters, every recorded encounter, every fragment of information, every possible weakness. This war had been planned long before the first attack. The admiral turned toward his senior commanders. "Begin Phase 1. The bridge instantly came alive. Orders spread across thousands of ships. Massive fleets changed course, weapon systems activated. Hidden defense stations awakened from centuries of silence. Across human-controlled space, ancient military networks came online. The preparation was over. The war had begun. But before the first human fleet could engage the enemy, another emergency alert appeared. A new transmission had arrived. The source shocked everyone. It came from the center of the galaxy itself, a region no ship had entered for thousands of years. The signal was weak, damaged, ancient, yet somehow still functioning. Engineers quickly decoded the message as the recording played. Every person on the bridge listened carefully. The voice was old, mechanical, and filled with urgency. To any civilization receiving this message, static interrupted the signal. Then the voice returned, "The hunters are not the creators of this war." The bridge became silent. The recording continued, "They are running from something far worse." Several officers exchanged nervous looks. The voice crackled again, almost lost beneath the interference. Then the final words emerged, "If they have reached your galaxy, it means the devourer is close behind them." The message ended. Silence filled the bridge. Nobody moved, nobody spoke. Because for the first time since the hunters arrived, a terrifying possibility entered everyone's mind. What if the hunters were not the real enemy? And somewhere beyond the darkness between galaxies, something even worse was already coming. The message echoed through the human flagship. "If they have reached your galaxy, it means the devourer is close behind them." For several seconds, nobody spoke. The bridge remained completely silent. The hunters had already terrified the galaxy. Now there was the possibility of something even worse. A threat powerful enough to make the hunters run. One officer finally broke the silence. Could the message be wrong? Grand Admiral Marcus Kane slowly shook his head. No. The officer looked worried, but if the hunters fear something else... He could not finish the sentence. He did not need to. Everyone already understood. If the hunters were not the strongest force in the universe, then the future looked even darker. Before anyone could say another word, alarms suddenly sounded across the bridge. A new battle report had arrived. The first major human fleet had engaged the hunters. Every screen switched to a live tactical display. Thousands of ships appeared across the map. The battle was beginning, far beyond the outer colonies. Human Task Force Orion moved into position. Nearly 4,000 human warships formed a defensive wall across a narrow corridor of space. At the center of the formation stood Admiral Sarah Walker, one of humanity's greatest commanders. She watched the sensor readings carefully. The hunters were approaching. Hundreds of dark vessels emerged from the void, silent, cold, and terrifying. Many alien observers expected the same outcome they had already seen. The hunters would destroy another fleet, then continue their advance, but this time was different. Humanity had spent centuries preparing. The hunters were not facing an unprepared enemy. They were facing the one civilization that had studied them longer than anyone else. Walker raised her hand. "All ships ready." Thousands of voices answered, "Ready." The hunter fleet accelerated. Their black vessels rushed forward with impossible speed. Exactly as expected, Walker smiled slightly. Phase 1. The orders spread instantly moments later. Hundreds of hidden devices activated throughout the battlefield. Massive gravity fields appeared across space. The hunters flew directly into them. For the first time, their movements slowed. Not by much, but enough. Human targeting systems locked on immediately. Fire. The darkness exploded with light. Thousands of energy cannons unleashed their attacks simultaneously. Entire waves of missiles followed. The hunters attempted to dodge, but the gravity traps had disrupted their precision. Several dark ships vanished in giant explosions. Others spun out of formation across the galaxy. Military analysts watched in disbelief. It was the first confirmed hunter loss ever recorded. Cheers erupted inside command centers. The impossible had happened. The hunters could be hurt. The battle intensified. Human ships moved with perfect coordination. Every action had been practiced for generations. Every maneuver had been designed specifically for this enemy. The hunters continued fighting. But for the first time, they were struggling. Back inside the Galactic Council, council members stared at the battle feed. Many could barely believe what they were seeing. One representative whispered, "The humans knew how to fight them." Another nodded slowly. "They have known for centuries." At that moment, many leaders finally understood why humanity had returned. Not for revenge, not for conquest, but for survival. While the rest of the galaxy had forgotten them, humans had spent 500 years preparing for a war nobody else knew existed. The battle lasted for hours. When it finally ended, the hunter fleet retreated. The victory was not complete. Human ships had suffered losses. Many brave crews had died, but the line had held. The hunters had been stopped. At least for now, across countless worlds, celebrations began. For the first time since the invasion started, people felt hope. The hunter transmission spread across the galaxy within hours. The devourer cannot be defeated. We are trying to escape it. Billions of people watched the message. And billions felt the same fear. For centuries, every civilization had believed that running away was the answer to danger. Now even the hunters, the force that had erased entire galaxies, were trying to flee. What kind of monster could make them do that? Inside the Galactic Council, panic returned. Several representatives demanded immediate evacuation plans. Others wanted every available ship prepared for a mass escape. Some even suggested abandoning the galaxy completely. The arguments grew louder with every passing minute. Then the doors of the council chamber opened. The room instantly fell silent. A human delegation entered. At the front walked Grand Admiral Marcus Kane. This was the first time in 500 years that a human had entered the Galactic Council. Every eye followed him, some with curiosity, some with fear, some with shame. Kane calmly walked to the center of the chamber. He looked around the room, at the leaders who had mocked humanity, at the civilizations that had pushed humans into exile. Then he spoke. "We received the same message as you." Nobody interrupted. "We also know the hunters are telling the truth." A wave of whispers spread through the chamber. The council leader stood. "If the devourer cannot be defeated, then what do you suggest?" Kane's answer came immediately. "We fight." Several representatives stared at him in disbelief. One leader laughed nervously. "Fight? Against that?" Kane activated a holographic display. The image of the giant object appeared above the chamber. Even now it looked impossible, a moving darkness larger than worlds, a force capable of consuming entire civilizations. The room became quiet. Then Kane revealed something nobody expected. Human explorers had not spent 500 years hiding. They had spent 500 years learning. Learning from dead galaxies, learning from lost civilizations, learning from every species that had encountered the devourer and failed. And eventually they discovered something important. The devourer was not immortal. It had weaknesses. Weaknesses so small that most species never survived long enough to find them. But they existed. For centuries, humanity had secretly built weapons designed for one purpose: stopping the devourer. The council members looked stunned. One representative leaned forward. "You planned for this all along?" Kane nodded. "Yes." At that moment, alarms echoed across the chamber. The devourer had entered the outer edge of the galaxy. The final battle was beginning, across thousands of systems. Every available fleet moved into position. Human warships, alien fleets, defense stations. Everything gathered for a last stand. For the first time in history, the entire galaxy fought as one. The hunters arrived as well, to everyone's surprise. They joined the defensive lines. They no longer attacked civilian worlds. They no longer acted like conquerors. Now they looked like desperate survivors. Because they understood the danger better than anyone. Near the edge of the galaxy, millions of ships faced the approaching darkness. The sight was breathtaking, the largest fleet ever assembled. Waiting, preparing, hoping, then the stars began disappearing. Entire regions of space darkened. The devourer had arrived. It did not look like a ship. It did not look alive. It looked like a moving piece of the universe itself. A wall of darkness stretching across space. Wherever it passed, light vanished. Energy vanished. Life vanished. The final battle began. Weapons powerful enough to destroy planets fired together. The galaxy shook beneath the attack. Massive explosions covered the darkness. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the devourer slowed. Cheers erupted across command centers. The attacks were working. Humanity's secret weapons had found their target. The weakness was real. The battle continued for hours, then days. Entire fleets sacrificed themselves. Worlds donated every resource they possessed. Millions gave everything for a chance to survive. At the center of the battle, Grand Admiral Kane commanded the final operation. The plan was dangerous. Failure would mean extinction. Success would save the galaxy. Human ships pushed deeper into the darkness. Closer than anyone had ever dared. One by one, they activated the ancient devices humanity had spent centuries building. The energy release was enormous. A wave of light exploded across space. For the first time, cracks appeared inside the devourer. The giant darkness trembled, then it began breaking apart. Slowly at first, then faster and faster. Until the impossible happened, the devourer collapsed. A shockwave spread across the galaxy. The darkness vanished, the stars returned. And silence filled space. The war was over. The galaxy had survived. Weeks later, celebrations filled countless worlds. Cities lit up with joy. People gathered in the streets. For the first time in generations, there was peace back inside the Galactic Council. A special ceremony was held. The council leader stood before representatives from every major civilization. His voice echoed through the chamber. For thousands of years, we laughed at humanity. The room remained silent. We called them weak. We called them insignificant. We believed they would never matter. He paused. Then looked toward the human delegation. But humanity saved us all. The entire chamber stood. Not as rulers, not as rivals, but as equals, at last. The galaxy understood its greatest mistake. The biggest mistake was never exiling humanity. The biggest mistake was never mocking them. The biggest mistake was believing humans were ordinary. Because when the darkness came, when the universe itself seemed ready to end, the species everyone laughed at became the species that saved everyone. And as the stars shined peacefully once again, a new chapter of history began. One where humanity was no longer the galaxy's biggest joke, but its greatest legend.